Life is suffering. You can't choose not to, but you can choose what it is you're going to suffer for. You can wake up every day and read, or you can do it for a couple of days and then convince yourself, like, oh, I didn't get to do it this morning because I was tired. Yeah, but why were you tired? What did you do yesterday that set you up for a bad today? I went to bed late last night. Why? Because I was working on stuff. Well, then you wake up early anyway. But then I'll be sleepy. Then you do it anyway. You try to ask me, you say, what is this thing I'm feeling? I said, it's life. You feel like you're alive for the first time. You're a complete person. I like him because I can talk to him like that. Even in the midst of all this, I said, you're already a scholar. Mechanical engineering, science, you're very smart. But now you're finding out that other side, the discipline side, the warrior side. And you know, which of these two things should you be? Should you be a warrior or should you be a scholar? And the answer to that question is yes. Of course, yes. Actually, we're missing a few things, I think, between what it takes to be a great warrior that overlaps with what it is to be a great scholar. How about honor? How about integrity? How about virtue, commitment to doing the right thing? Most people work just by going into like autopilot and just completing tasks. It's like if I have students who will complain about a grade sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes, and it always sounds the same. For some reason, they always look like Machado for some reason, but they always say things like, I do my work. Oh, clap, you do your work. You know how basic and rudimentary that sounds when you say something like that? That sounds like you show up, you clock in, and you do some mechanical task, and you're like, I do my work. Who cares if you do your work? Do you think about the stuff? Do you grow from it intellectually? Do you actually engage the ideas? Do you become better? Do you become not just smarter, but actually become better, more critical? Not critical in the sense of finding problems with everything, but critical in the sense of understanding things. Or do you just show up and do your work? You know, if your mindset is, I just do my work, then you're going to prepare yourself for a life in which you're going to have a job someday, that your job is just a job, and your job is to just show up and do some work. Which, if that's your thing, you want to show up every day and go into autopilot for 8 hours a day, and then go home and complain about how you don't get paid what you deserve, and how your boss isn't as smart as you, or whatever, fine. And I say that fine because that is, after all, the life that most people do choose. Well, why? Because they're doing what they have to. Why? Because they didn't do before what they didn't want to do. So you discipline is to do the things that you don't really want to do right now to get the things that you eventually want. Anybody want to wake up in the morning and go for a run? And anybody want to go eat vegetables all day? Anybody want to just drink water and nothing else? No. But those are the things, those are the disciplined things that will lead to help optimize your health. Anybody want to set aside hours every day to go exercise? And I don't just mean to go do it when you want to do it. I mean to commit to it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, between the hours of whatever, 6 and 7 or whatever, to set aside that time, that is what you do. Anybody want to set aside an hour in the morning? You wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning instead of 7, and you read for an hour? You set a program to yourself, no read, no feed. If I don't read for an hour, I don't eat anything until that happens. No, I don't want to do that. But you want to be smart. But you want to be critical. But you want to know things. You want to be interesting. You want people to like you. But I don't want to put in the work for it. Yeah, I know, man. But then again, if life is suffering. You can't choose not to, but you can choose what it is you're going to suffer for. You can wake up every day and read, or you can do it for a couple of days and then convince yourself, like, oh, I didn't get to do it this morning because I was tired. Yeah, but why were you tired? What did you do yesterday that set you up for a bad today? I went to bed late last night. Why? Because I was working on stuff. Well, then you wake up early anyway. But then I'll be sleepy. Then you do it anyway. Not because it's comfortable. You don't do what's expedient. You do what's right. If you want a life that's right. Do you want a life that's expedient, or do you want a life that's right? You know? You see people all the time complaining about the results that you get. It's one of the reasons that I think that doing sports is so important, because the field doesn't lie. The mat doesn't lie. You get out there and you get the results that you get. I was at a tournament this past weekend. It was a huge tournament, like 3,000 competitors, and you see every gamut of emotions going on with people. Talking to one of my students is great. He's a student over at UCSD, I had this great video of me. I'm talking to him. He just had his first competition ever. And he comes off of the mat, and he's just dazed, and he just sits down on the concrete, and he just looks at me and goes, "Coach, what happened?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" "I don't know what happened. I blacked out like 5 minutes ago." And he was serious. He had no recollection of the earlier 5 minutes. And myself and my friend were coaching, we're laughing, and he's just like, he says, "That's the craziest thing I've ever done. I've never been in a fight before. That's the craziest thing I've ever done." I go, "It's the craziest thing so far. Hang out with us for a while. You'll do way crazier shit than that." And he sits there and he goes, "I'm down." And this is a guy who goes to UCSD from high school. I think he's 20 now. I think he's in his second year over there. He's a scholar. He's doing mechanical engineering. And I was talking to this guy a couple of months ago, and he was thinking about quitting because he felt like he just wasn't getting any better. He shows up like 2 days a week, and he says, "I don't feel like I'm getting any better." I said, "Yeah, well then show up a third day." And that's hard to do. If you feel like you're showing up twice a week and you're not getting better, and you're getting all the bruises, you're getting all the tiredness, you're getting all the soreness, you're putting it aside all that same time, and you don't feel like you're getting better, how do you convince a person to do it more? And the only way you do it more is if you believe in a process. If you can look around and say, "I believe that if I do this a little bit more, I can get a little bit better." And so he does show up now sometimes 3 days a week. He shows up, but I tell him, "Man, you can't lie to it though. The time you put in, it's going to show right out there on the mats." And he lost by just 2 points. Long story. That's very close. To lose by 2 points is very close. And he was thinking like, "Man, if only I had, what could I have done differently?" Because he couldn't remember the match at all. And he was like trying to ask me, he's like, "What is this thing I'm feeling?" I said, "It's life. You feel like you're alive for the first time. You're a complete person." I like him, so I can talk to him like that. Even in the midst of all this, I said, "You're already a scholar, mechanical engineering, science. You're very smart, but now you're finding out that other side, the discipline side, the warrior side. And you know, which of these two things should you be? Should you be a warrior, or should you be a scholar?" And the answer to that question is yes. Of course, yes. Because if you separate those two things out, you might be very smart. But one of the things that we're missing a few things, I think, between what it takes to be a great warrior that overlaps with what it is to be a great scholar. How about honor? How about integrity? How about virtue, commitment to doing the right thing? Yeah, you can have a brave soldier who's strong and he's disciplined physically, but he can confront his fears. Do you want that guy to have no honor though? To go into an urban setting and just mow down all the civilians because they're in the way? Do you want that guy out there? Or do you want the person who actually is able to say, "Even though my friend died, I have virtue, and I realize that murder is wrong. I cannot kill these innocent people, even though the bad guys are right behind them shooting at me"? Or do you want the person who just says, "Screw it," and kills everybody? If you're a scholar, and yeah, you might be smart, you might be disciplined, but you don't have the courage to speak your ideas. I mean, did we find out recently that just speaking your ideas can get you murdered in this country? And yet you go out there and you do it anyway. Why? Is it because you're not afraid? No. Of course you're afraid. You're crazy not to. I mean, you're actually literally clinically crazy, clinically insane to not be afraid. But you go forward anyway. I saw this great interview once. I shouldn't say great, but you'll know what I mean when I tell you. It was on like the 60th anniversary of the D-Day invasion or something like that. And you had like the last of these guys who were there, and it shows old men now, and they're up on top of the cliffs over there, and they're walking around, and so many people died there. So many Americans died there. They just built a cemetery for the Americans over there. Shipping all those bodies back across would have been impossible. So they just made a cemetery at the site where these guys fought. And there's an old man, and some reporter goes up and sticks a microphone in front of his face and asks him, "What's it like to be a hero?" Yeah. Like you have only a person with no awareness of violence can ask a question like that of somebody. What's it like to be a hero? It's just like some of you, when you were little kids, maybe you met a cop and you asked the cop, "Have you ever shot anybody?" You've got to just not be familiar with violence at all to ask people questions like that. And so the old man, he just kind of shakes his head. He says, "Hero?" He goes, "No, I was a coward who kept moving forward." They were all afraid, of course. but you keep moving forward anyway. Why? Because of the things that we're missing right here. Honor, virtue, yes, commitment, yes, dedication, yes, discipline. But you have to have the why. What is it that gets a warrior to pick up the sword? Yeah, we are right about those things. Pride, family, but it's the word, the spoken word, the written word that commands people, that motivates people to get up and fight. Our ideals, our virtues, these weren't just come about by nature. This is the intellect that grasps these things. If I were to ask you who are all the most famous people of all time, it's very rarely a warrior. It's very rarely a warrior. And if it is a warrior, it's like Alexander the Great, who led great warriors. But these were the people who motivated great warriors to do great deeds. You look at someone like Martin Luther King Jr. He was arrested, true, but whatever, man. This is a dude who shows up. By the way, he has an earned doctorate by the time he's 27 years old. That's very young to get a doctorate. Most people get their doctorates in their 30s. He had his earned doctorate by the time he was 27. This is a dude who shows up as an outsider in Alabama, and he convinces people to go with him and to sit at a lunch counter, get attacked by cops, and not fight back. Anybody down for that? No, probably not. But if that dude walked in here and he gave you a speech and he talked to you, we'd all be like, hey, let's go do it. We'll join in. Let's go. Why? Because he knew how. Because he was a warrior. He was a scholar, and he was a scholar, and he was a warrior. He was willing to put himself out there and to do these things, and to speak eloquently about it, to motivate people to do that. Most of us be like, screw that, man. They do that to me. I'm fighting back. And then what do the TV cameras see? Yeah, they see riots, they see fighting, and then all of a sudden the public is like, oh man, they're terrible people. We need to put that down. That's lawlessness. We need to destroy that. And you set your cause back. Is it the right way to do things? It's the effective way to do things. And so the public had to see innocent people getting hosed and attacked by police, by military, in order for public support to just go, my God, what the hell are we doing? Why are we allowing this to happen? Why are we not stopping this? They're all human beings. Why don't we start treating them that way? You had to see that. Can you imagine what Martin Luther King Jr. could have done if instead of motivating people to be attacked by police and not fight back, but instead had started a corporation? What could that guy have motivated people to do? How much money could that dude have made in the private sector with his skill set? But instead, the guy dies on a balcony. Anybody know what he was doing in town? He's in a motel balcony. Anybody happen to know?
Didn't he die in the hospital?
No.
He survived the gunshot.
I don't know if he survived. You can survive the gunshot, but not survive the gunshot. You know.
Well, I mean,
you can be pronounced dead at the hospital, but yeah, they didn't know what he was doing in town that day. He was supporting striking garbage workers. You know the people that when we're little kids, we see them picking up the trash and we're like, trash pickers, your dad's a trash picker. You know the people that as little kids we look down on them? He was in town supporting those people. He didn't put himself above anybody. He put them all on par together. That's what he was doing there. He was supporting striking garbage workers. That's incredible. Think about the millions, the tens of millions of dollars this guy could have made. And he could have lived a lot longer too, if he had sought that. But it took courage for him to say, it's not the right thing. It took honor, it took virtue, it took integrity to say these are the things that are worth fighting for. As a scholar, you figure out what's worth fighting for. As a warrior, you have the willingness to do it, and you have the development to do it. It's not enough to be willing to fight. It's also about being able to fight. You need to be both. You need to be both, man. Because anything less than that makes you an incomplete person. That doesn't mean that you get out there and you can beat up everybody in the world. No, it's not it at all. But it means that you have the courage, the physical ability, and the intellectual ability to have ideas, to develop them, and to stand up for them. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticism, critiques? Yeah. Happy Thursday, man.